Fantastic. Now we are online, ladies and gentlemen. To my absolute and my colleagues' pleasure, we can sing now, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. And this
Hallelujah.
series, in my early ages, when I was still young, was Welcome Back, Cotter. Now I can sing, welcome back, Laurie. It's such a pleasure to have you again.
Well, thanks so much. It's great to be here and get to chat with you all.
It is a pleasure, as we have had several episodes, a very special one, which is reminding me to the Blues Brothers in Chicago with dark glasses, which I will never, ever forget. And it is such these milestones that I was the first time checking up a bit and being curious about your background, Laurie. So I would like to share with the audience that you are really what one could honestly call an influencer, as you, with your heart and your brain, are in the small, medium business enterprises. You are committed and you have received already 6 times an award to be a small business influencer. And what we respect, honor, and what we find marvelous is that you dig in with heart, soul, brain, and empathy and emotion into the concerns, the trends, and the abilities of small, medium enterprises. And
Well,
this is fabulous.
Yeah. Well, we're also SMB Group. We are also a small business, so
That makes
we're
sense.
kind of empathetic to ourselves.
So when we see you at events, it's always a pleasure because we know the right questions are going to be asked.
Yeah.
For the SMB. Plus, you're wonderful.
Well, you guys always have great questions too, and I enjoy talking to you all the time. So,
would you like to add something to my very short introduction for the audience?
Well, I don't want to bore anybody. You know, I've been an industry analyst for a very long time. And, you know, before I did SMB, I did a lot of the enterprise kind of analyst work. And I just really enjoy small and medium business because it's so much kind of more oriented around using technology for the business instead of kind of figuring out how to, you know, just kind of deploy technology more for technology's sake and to get out in front of a trend. You know, which is a long way of saying small and medium businesses are really pragmatic and they're looking for results. And so I just find this a whole lot more interesting.
Yeah. And today we have the pleasure to have you as our expert aboard, as based on an actual research you have done at the beginning of the year. You have taken an approach which I wholeheartedly embrace, as you have taken several perspectives to make it easier to digest from the perspective or the viewpoint of persons which are to be addressed, which should have a benefit out of findings, and where they feel most comfortable with. This is your yearly, as we are very lucky that we have shared with you several parts on the AI trends, for instance, how they are influencing small and medium businesses and general technology trends. You have done the perspectives of not only the trends, but how they touch the workplace and how they touch the opportunities where organizations smartly could invest to their overall benefit. This takes me to the perspective of the organizational experience, which is seen as the combination of the employee experience and the customer experience. Such is that I was taken in reading the 3 ebooks and the research that it is marvelous to see that we can have here some real interesting aspects overall how after COVID the workplace, technology impacts, and the challenges of where do I invest for the benefit of all my nuggets. With this, I would like to start off our conversation with a very simple question, such as how many participants did you have in the study, Laurie?
That's an easy one. We had 750 people that are decision makers in small, medium, and mid-market companies. So they would be anywhere from one employee for one to 99 is what we call small business, 100 to 999 employees is medium business, and then 1,000 to 2,500 employees is mid-market. So it has a pretty broad range, and in the research we segmented it a lot by employee size. So there are a lot of nuances by employee size, but to keep things kind of simple today, I'll just be kind of talking about the findings mostly overall, so it's kind of easier to absorb.
Yeah, because I was going to ask if you had seen any sharp delineations between those bands.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the questions, right? In general, in almost every survey we do, larger companies, obviously they have more resources, more expertise, more skills, bigger budgets, and they tend to be more bullish on investing in technology in general. But we are finding that even the smallest of companies today are increasingly realizing that technology is at least somewhat critical, if not very critical, to their business operating successfully. So there are a lot of nuances, in terms of challenges that they have with technology, in terms of things like business priorities, things like that. But it really does vary question by question. And as we go through some of your questions, I'm happy to put a little light on it. And I think in the ebooks we have a little of that too.
How do the priorities and challenges differ with size of companies?
Well, the smaller the companies, typically the more the issues revolve around problems of scarcity, lack of skills, lack of money, lack of technology expertise, basically that whole lack of budget, lack of talent, all those lack ofs. As you get bigger, as the companies get bigger, they tend to be, all right, those aren't quite so pressing on us every day, keeping the lights on, making sure we have people here to do the job, that kind of thing. So the challenges, become more involved and around, compliance concerns and regulatory concerns and supply chain issues, and as just more complexity, but also they have more resources, right? And then on the business end, for the very small companies, their big goals are always almost, how do I get more business? How do I get more customers in the door? How do I keep my customers? And again, as they get bigger, the challenges tend to, not that those don't stay important, they are, but we see a lot more of a priority on employee concerns, engaging, attracting, retaining the workforce, reskilling them, upskilling them, because I think they're, in the low end, those businesses are just really trying to get their foothold in the market and stabilize it and find a way to grow from there. Whereas once you've grown, I think you can have a perspective more that, okay, really for us to grow further, it's not going to be just about better marketing and, better sales pitch and all that. We're going to have to really make sure that this workforce is well equipped to help us go where we want to go.
Which is quite an interesting thing, because when I look at your results, saying where they see benefits, the businesses in general. So it's all about efficiency. If I summarize up the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, one, and the one that is just before others is employee engagement.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And you know,
wait. There's one more. There's one more. So I actually see a dichotomy. My God, dichotomy. Marshall, help. Dichotomy.
Yes, right.
Okay. See a dichotomy there, because if I'm looking how they are prioritizing their tech investment, it's to increase engagement. So if this is not a major benefit, why are they doing that then?
No, it is a big benefit. Exactly.
Well, this was number 10.
Which one?
Employee benefit. Increase employee engagement was from a benefit point of view. This was number 10. Name it 9. Just above others.
In which list? The corporate ones or the employee ones?
Well, the pages.
You know, in the corporate, in the overall corporate initiatives,
I can share it.
A third.
I can.
You know, their top 3 corporate initiatives. Their very first one was automating, right, and streamlining, investing in technology to do that, right. But then after that, it was talent management and improving their programs for attracting, engaging, and training employees is their second highest corporate initiative. So I'm not really sure, you know, which chart you're looking at, but
it's fair enough that Thomas is sharing it, so we discuss on the same sheet.
We shall see.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of different, you know, one of the things we asked them their top strategic initiatives.
I'm looking at that one here.
Okay, so
this says benefits are, well, benefits the technology provides, yeah. And this is all
benefits.
about
That's
about efficiency.
That's a different question.
And here at the bottom, we are talking about employee engagement. At the bottom.
Well,
so if I go,
maybe
go
they're
pages,
saying, okay.
If I go on 2 pages,
number 2 is improve programs to engage and reskill, upskill employees. That's their second most important initiative.
That's the second most important initiative. So I'm after the dichotomy of this being the second most important one versus this being the one with probably these
so
benefits.
Those are the benefits. So that's I see what you're saying now. So that's obviously this engaging, attracting, reskilling is very important to them. However, they're not necessarily seeing technology providing those benefits. So I think that's pretty easily explained there, you know, so it's 2 different questions, really.
Yeah, it is, but apparently it doesn't add benefit.
No, I wouldn't say it doesn't add benefit. You know, in other words, we're forcing them to pick their top 3 because if you allow survey respondents to say check all that apply, you're just going to get a mishmash of everybody checking almost everything. So you're kind of forcing them. But I mean, I think it is a good point that this is really important to them, attracting, engaging, reskilling, all those kinds of things. And in terms of how they see technology benefiting them in that specific area, no, it's not really that high on the list, which is interesting. And it is an interesting dichotomy and something that I think the vendors that are in this whole, you know, workplace and, I don't know, workspace and employee you HR, all those kinds of things, maybe need to think a little bit more about that. Maybe, I was just reading an article the other day that, how much time and energy it takes to do a lot of HR oriented benefits things, right? And how a lot of these systems, and I won't even get into brands because they were unhappy with most of them, that they're not really that user friendly, right? And yet the most important thing they say that applications need to be is user friendly. So I think there's probably something going on there, because when you think about it, HR apps and collaboration apps are probably the only applications that almost everyone in the company uses. And so, you think you juxtapose that with accounting, right? Well, your accountant's using it. They're pounding away at it every day. But most of us, maybe we do an expense report or something like that. But we're just tangentially using it. Whereas these other apps, they have to be really easy for everybody to use, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that there is something there, Thomas. I don't see it at all as strange, though. It's a hard area to get right, because unlike sales or marketing or any of those things, the people using HR and collaboration apps, using it as part of their job, not the main focus of their job. Except in HR. Right?
To me, the spread of numbers just says there are a lot of competing concerns in a business. The difference between improved employee engagement 23% versus cost savings through automation, it's not that broad.
Right.
And I think that's something that you're going to see a lot from SMBs, because when you look at these same concerns with larger businesses, the results are a lot more, I've used the word sharp at least once today, but you'll have a few concerns that are big, and then the rest will slope down very quickly to zero.
Yeah, small and medium businesses, especially when you span and include mid-market, they're very diverse. Even if we just looked at companies with 1 to 10 people, they're very diverse. It might be everything from a very technically expert, tech startup to, a mom and pop pizza place. So their diversity, I think, in most of our surveys really shows through in exactly the way you're saying, Marshall, that depending where they are, who they are, what their goals and aspirations are for growth, is really going to affect their priorities and how they want to use technology in their business. You just can't use the same kind of broad brush stroke as you might be able to sometimes in large enterprise.
What we discussed yesterday was also that a lot of businesses, and there is a similarity with larger enterprises, have lost their skillful employees. They have lost a lot of their core competence by the challenges through COVID. And to a certain extent, one can help himself if I do not get the right skillful people aboard again, or my people back, which I had to let go as I couldn't afford them any longer, that there is a real challenge. Technology cannot always be a substitute for the human beings. Now,
dog coming in, sorry.
Yeah, but always welcome. The thing is that what we observe is that in our former conversations, we have had also the concern that the SMBs have to take a coin at least 3 times and turn it before they invest, which is literally a German saying that one has to be very cost conscious. On the other side, one wants to have a certain effect. Now, I was curious by comparing all the time shapes and the trends from 20 to 24. Does the workplace has such differed, and from where are people working? Because we have that opinion that on one side everybody prefers to have more home office, and on the other side people are forced back to the large paid buildings.
Yeah. And so, what we saw is that before the pandemic, a very small percentage of employees were working remotely. Like I think the way we asked the question was 2 days a week or more, very small percentage. Then, of course, the pandemic hit, right? And all of a sudden, any worker that could work at home, obviously, if you were a nurse or a doctor or, involved in mass transportation or something like that, you couldn't work at home. But anybody that could work at home was suddenly working at home because that was a mandate, right? And it kind of turned everything on its head. And what we saw in that time was a lot of businesses that had already invested in cloud applications were kind of sitting pretty in a way, because they could still do a lot of the things that they normally were doing in terms of workflow and business processes and everything else. People went home, but they could still have that same process to get things done. On the flip side, people that didn't were suddenly scrambling, and maybe they were getting a cloud application to process invoices, or they were getting a cloud application like Zoom just to have meetings and collaborate or whatever. So many businesses, so many businesses adopted more cloud applications then. So then we start coming out of the pandemic, right?
Yep.
And I think kind of mirroring the trend among a lot of large companies. Some of the SMBs we found in this survey, because it was way up, the percentage of people working at home, and the companies thinking, we're going to, probably be increased people working at home. But this year, for the first time, we saw that a lot of SMBs are really trying to reel employees back to the office. The problem is that with the talent shortage and the fact that employees typically would like to work at home if their job is a job that permits that, at least part of the time, it's kind of a conundrum, right? So right now, we think that the hybrid model, which is very prevalent, that's the middle ground, and companies will have to not only turn to tech, but I think, Ralph, what you're saying is that, also really think about more carefully how to construct this hybrid workplace, right? So people are productive, collaborative, engaged, from the employee perspective and from the management perspective, because I think a lot of in management thinks, if I can kind of put my hands on them, I'm going to get more out of them. And we all know, well, a lot of people know that's not true. But so I think it's still in a state of flux is the bottom line, and we're still kind of adapting to it. But I really do think that with the talent shortage, it's going to be really hard to get people to say, yeah, I want to work in an office 5 days a week.
Why do they ask for that then at all?
Well, no, I think especially,
no,
millennials and Gen Z like to work in the office at least a couple of days a week.
But
we haven't personally done that survey, but I've seen a lot of surveys where, when you think about it, we're all pretty far along in our careers, So we don't crave that. But if you're more in the start of your career, that whole dynamic of being in an office environment and interacting with people live and, having the chit chat around coffee. That's a big way people grow and learn. It's not even your job per se, but you're just learning from all these social interactions.
There's a difference between offering work in an office and demanding working in
Absolutely.
office. So why do businesses in times where they are at the short end of the lever when it comes to changing job do such not so smart things?
Well, I don't know. I'm not a business psychiatrist. I will say, definitely if I had a business where I was hiring young employees and, we're all virtual, but if I had a physical office, I probably would want them to spend, some time coming to the office to kind of absorb some of the culture and things like that. If that was possible. Now, on the flip side, maybe I could only hire people that were remote. And so in those kinds of situations, maybe I'd want to have office, or not office, but, different kinds of functions to team build to bring people together.
Right.
I know, like, for instance, I've known Marshall forever. And we know each other from real world, real life interactions. And, those bonds are very hard. Just to give you a little anecdote, in the middle of COVID, I remember talking to a number of analyst relations people who were saying how hard it is. Some of the analyst firms had these young analysts that had never been out on the road, done the meet and greets, had the cocktails, had the breakfast, and they really were saying, these people are at a big disadvantage, and it's really true. So I don't personally see it as black and white, like everybody has to be in the office, everybody has to be out of the office. I do think forcing people is never a good thing.
No, right.
But hopefully you can make that hybrid work thing something that when people are there, they're there for a reason. There's more collaborative activities, things like that, and that helps foster the engagement. Because that's a big reason that they say they want to bring people back. They do feel like it's company culture and employee engagement is lacking when they're not in the office. Whether that's, a biased opinion or not, I don't know. It's their opinion.
Well, they're entitled to it.
The interesting perspective we touched as well in a bit the side chat is that there seem to be some differences. We here in German-speaking Europe and always listening to the sing-song of that we have an upcoming recession or we are in the middle of a recession versus the United States, where it looks like that you are on a positive wave of employment. How is your perspective on that one?
Well, we definitely found that, even though SMBs, their top concerns are macro concerns, right? Not about my business, but just in general, these things I can't control. The top two are the pocketbook issues. The top two are inflation and, worries about recession. But despite that, we also found a majority felt like, I'm equipped. I can navigate the ups and downs of the environment, right? And I really think for some of them, they got through COVID, right? And that was a very challenging time. And I think a lot of them feel, or a lot of companies feel in general, I've learned how to kind of change on a dime. And now that I've learned to be more flexible, I can do that again. Another thing is we do see that a majority. Go ahead.
No, that was the rocket science, so it was a praise.
Oh, well,
It's a happy
a majority are planning to hire, like 52% are planning to hire more salaried employees, and about a third are planning to hire more contractors. And again, you know, of those that want to hire, 58% said that, hey, we think we're pretty likely to meet our hiring goals, or very likely to meet our hiring goals. And about 37% said they're somewhat likely to meet their hiring goals. And even the smallest companies are confident. And so I think that, you know, like I said, that reflects that the improved business climate here, because this is a US only survey, and the fact that they expect their own revenues to increase. And, you know, they're starting to see some of the efficiencies from technology pay off. And I must say, too, everything's more expensive. So they're bringing in more money.
The aspect is that there is, sorry, Thomas, that there is what we had in the pre-conversation, that there are some influences from the outside where you take a perspective that you talk about a recession, even analyzing the facts, it is not really there. Yeah. If you go through the fairs in Germany, what I did in last months, the climate is positive. And there is a lot of, from my perspective, not necessary talking about, oh, drama, instead of pulling up the sleeves and get things done. Yeah.
Right. And you know, I think small businesses are very much known for pulling up their sleeves and, you know, getting it done. And, you know, it's kind of funny too. Like I remember, you know, like in the recession or when COVID hit, and, you know, everybody is at it like a deer in the headlights at first, right? You're all like, oh my God, this is like the sky is falling, Chicken Little, it's the end of the world. But then, you know, like anything, you kind of snap out of it and say, okay, what does this mean? How can I make changes? How can I adapt? And, you know, it's true. A lot of businesses did go under, but a lot more businesses did not during COVID. So I think, you know, that has shown people how to be resilient in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I do wonder if the businesses that managed to survive COVID are going to have trouble switching back to pre-COVID standards. I mean, I didn't know that box is open and it's not going to close. But when we were talking about talent acquisition just now, I was thinking, sure, it is easy for, the businesses think that it's going to be easy to fill the roles. My question is more about retention. Are they going to be able, you know, getting the talent is not the same thing as keeping the talent. And people who have just entered the workforce have very different expectations from those that used to.
Yeah. No, I agree. And that's why I think in terms of their top strategic initiatives, that programs to not only attract but engage and retain employees is number 2. I mean, it is so important for them. And it will depend, of course, right, company to company. You know, I have my daughter-in-law who's at it's not a small or medium business, pretty big company, but they, after, you know, they were the beneficiaries, let's say, of COVID. People were buying a lot of goods for their homes. And then that started to kind of dry up. And all of a sudden, you know, they're laying people off, and the ones that are staying, they're expecting them to, you know, work more hours and all this stuff. And, you know, she quit, and a couple of her other colleagues quit, because you're right, Marshall, they're not going to put up with that. And then on the flip side, you know, you hear about businesses that are really trying to listen to their employees and, you know, create a workplace that is more people friendly and not trying to rule with the iron hand, but more the carrot than the stick, I guess, right?
Right.
Talking about people and their preparedness and their willingness to change in particular, did your research give any indication in how far the changes in processes and manpower and job descriptions that AI technologies will instigate? Is there any insight on that?
We not in this survey, in our AI survey, we did ask, and we basically found it was like a 50-50 thing. About half of people felt like, oh, AI is going to create new jobs and new opportunities for employees. And but on the flip side, about half of people thought it's going to, impact that negatively and maybe mean some jobs might go away. And, I think personally, I think the bottom line to all that is there's no question it's going to reshape how a lot of work gets done, right? And I think employees and the organizations they work for have to be really doing that skills building, right? The reskilling, the upskilling to say, okay, if what you do is write press releases all day and do PR activities, where can AI help you do this more easily and better so that you can focus more on the things that AI can't do in PR, right? That's an easy one because obviously we all know it could probably create some decent first drafts of a press release, right? If you're a coder, right, where a lot of companies are using AI to help them develop code. And then the software engineers, they get to spend more time on really refining it and fine-tuning it. But you have to, I think, both as an individual as well as the companies, really be tuned into that. Because the people that don't figure out how to use AI to do whatever their job is better are going to be at a bigger and bigger disadvantage. Because this genie is out. It's not getting back into the bottle, I don't think.
No.
And I believe that one of the other researches which have lately been done, you have done 2 dedicated publications on how AI is influencing SMB, just to be mentioned. There is one market participant, one vendor, who did a very in-depth research on how upskilling the existing workforce is a mandatory thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, change is inevitable, and it's not like this is AI thing is just something technology people have to know about, right? The people that do technology or in job, everybody's got to know about it. And I think that's a little bit daunting. Because if you're in the small to medium business space, you probably don't have AI experts, and you really have to. And I think in that survey, Ralph, that you're talking about, only about a quarter of them had any kind of program to kind of keep employees up to date and help them understand what's going on even. And this is all really pretty early, and I think a lot of these companies are going to have to try to work with some of the vendors that they really rely on, because I know a lot of the vendors are developing educational programs around AI. And so whether you're in marketing or you're in HR or finance or whatever, if you're working with one of the main vendors, they're doing a lot. So now what does that mean? You've got to take advantage of it, and your company has to take advantage of it.
I just want to make one remark on one of the social media posts I made lately, which resonated quite well. It is still the topic about the fool with a tool. If you do know how to operate properly with what you got at your hands. And the challenge is put the right questions to the machine to get some useful answers. And that is not as easy as it looks, especially if you come to coding or number crunching exercises, or if you want to try one of these sophisticated programs which shall create your PowerPoint for you. Not as easy as it is described. Trust me.
No, it's really not. I think that's a great point, and that's what we've learned in some of these studies and everything else. Lots of conversations is that not only are people going to make a lot of maybe not so great decisions if they really don't understand the basics. I mean, they don't have to be technical experts, but they have to know, okay, where's the data coming from in the AI model, and what are kind of the rules, the algorithms are using, the assumptions it's making, and also just, I guess, really vetting what the output is, right? Because there's a lot, I'm sure you've seen it too, there's a lot of very bad content out there now, I would say, that, basically it looks like somebody's just going into like ChatGPT and saying, write me an article on X. And whatever they're spitting out, they just want to get more content out there. So they're putting this stuff up. So I think the key is really to be educated, not only to avoid those problems and mistakes, but also if you're educated, then you really can understand possible use cases, and you can be more imaginative and creative and things like that. So like I said, we're really early here. And so of course everybody isn't, on top of this yet, but I think, people will be getting more and more, motivated to do that.
Yeah. I think it would be kind of fun to be a prompt engineer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's kind of similar to what we do now. As analysts, as journalists, as anything in that field, we try to ask the right questions to elicit a useful response.
Right,
that's exactly what you're doing when you're asking questions of an AI.
Yeah, and doing it in a really iterative way, right? Because the first question I was just working on something the other day. I think I put a bunch of our survey data in, and I asked it to, I don't remember exactly what I asked it to do with that data, probably just summarize the key highlights or, something like that. And, I had to keep making it more specific. And still at the end, it wasn't exactly what I wanted, Ralph, like you're saying. But, through 3 or 4 different tweaks of the question, I finally got to, pretty close.
And this is, I think, the key difference to Marshall's comment, basically, because if, as an analyst, we are talking to adults, and if you are talking to a GPT system, you need to talk to a 3-year-old and frame your questions correspondingly.
Yeah, I mean, constant checks.
And it is extremely valuable to take that perspective, Thomas, such as even that billions of training hours have been spent, or data are in the systems right now. It still is in that process that it's a very young child. Yeah? And our expectations as users are going to a certain direction and are probably too much of an expectation. And we do not keep in mind that we still have the challenge, which is the mother of all questions, such as, when is somebody there who makes my data clean and I don't have to do it? Because we still have that problem that if you feed the machine rubbish, you will get rubbish as a result. Yeah.
Right, which is why I think that for a lot of SMBs, the more they can It's fine if you want to use ChatGPT to draft a press release or something, but in terms of anything with your financials, your sales and marketing processes, your HR kinds of tasks, you want to be using it within an application, right? That you know and trust, where the AI is integrated with the business processes. And or you can ask the vendor, okay, about the algorithms, if I put my data in there, are you using it somewhere else? And, I want to opt out if you are. All those kinds of good things. But these vendors, a lot of them are building, I don't know, instead of a large language model, I don't know what they call it, whether it's a narrow language model, but something specific to, let's say, again, processing invoices with all kinds of rules and things that regulations, tax laws, whatever, that, if you go into a general purpose AI, it's not in there. So again, think about the task at hand. How high risk is it if it's done incorrectly? And especially if it's done at volume, right? Anything transactional, you want to be using it within the Intuit or Sage or Acumatica or Workday or, whosever applications you're using, you want to be using it in there where everything's vetted through an expert knowledge network, and there's no just going off into the wild blue yonder of ChatGPT. Because the other thing that I worry about all the time is ChatGPT is just, and all these other AIs, they're just scraping the universe constantly, right? But now we're putting more and more back into the universe that's scraped and then reworked. Like we were just talking about a lot of bad content out there. So at what point, I'm worried in some sense that there's going to be less original content because so much more content is going to be going back in that was really regurgitated from the system to begin with.
Yeah, that's a funny diagnosis. So I, by the way, call those generative systems derivative systems mostly, because this is what they are actually doing. They are not creating anything new. And
well, they are taking new. They're continually searching for new information, but if less of the information is truly new,
even whatever they create is a derivation of something that already existed.
Exactly.
Yeah, so
exactly. That's a problem, right?
This is a problem, and it will become more of a problem if funny people are using the efficiencies they now gained and have lots of stuff derived and published, so that the systems learn from it again. So this is kind of a reinforcement learning, actually.
Yeah. So, I really think at the end of the day, a lot of the best business application of AI is going to be within the solutions we already use.
Which means we need, business people need to get their other ducks in order first, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Now, AI is the interesting topic now because it's new, but using AI for your customer experience or whatever is not going to be as effective if you don't have your basic technology sorted out, if you don't have your processes sorted out.
Yeah, danke.
It's like we talked about AI, but we forget to talk about the things that got us there.
And the integration stuff, important.
There is one section in your current report, on one of the current reports. Most SMBs are embracing AI. Well, they are doing, or maybe they are doing, but in what areas? And what scenarios, what use cases are they looking at?
Yeah, well, we found most of the early, and I don't have that. I was really working off the other survey, so I don't have that top of mind. But we found a lot of the early uses more in the marketing area. No surprise there, because again, you can it's this is for generative AI now. I mean, obviously, a lot of applications have been using machine learning and other kinds of AI knowledge systems in their applications for years, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of generative AI, I think a lot of the early use, and certainly we see the people that are most kind of game to be trying things out are marketers and communications people, those kinds of people, where we find that the HR people and the financial management people, they really much more want to use AI in the context of the applications they use.
Yeah.
So, and we also found out that only about a third of the people in the survey for the AI thought that they really understand how AI works. And so again, that knowledge gap can lead to some misconceptions and problems and things like that. And they don't need to be technical experts, but I think basic literacy is going to be important.
Yeah.
About the sexiness of AI as one thing, I was still wondering how they make the choice. Do they throw dices? Do they ask their relatives about where to invest to get something beneficial for their organization?
ChatGPT.
I think that the first place, I mean, I've been to a lot of events lately in addition to surveys, but the first place, and again, this is good, that they're going to is the vendors they already use. So if I use Workday, if I use Sage, if I want to know what AI capabilities are built into this application I already use and I'm paying for, or what I can pay extra maybe to have something added on. And like I said, now that's put the content creation thing aside, because that's like the wild, wild west.
Yeah.
But in terms of, business process stuff, it's all about what are the use cases? How are you, Mr. Vendor or Mrs. Vendor, using AI in this app to give me better information more quickly so I can make better decisions? Or how are you using AI to streamline something, or just adding the conversational interface so I can ask a question more easily than I could, if I was just only had access to an analytical tool that I might need like data science background to know how to use. So a lot of these events, I mean, the vendors have really been highlighting these pragmatic use cases for AI and getting, from what I can see, a very good reception for most of them. Because they're basically saying, we're giving this to you in a measured way. We're not just throwing it at you, all at once. We're giving you in a measured way. We're showing you how it works. And most of them really are. We're showing you exactly how it's working. And the customers are like, oh, this is great, because now I can do this a lot more efficiently. And the people that do that task can do something less right and something more, value added.
How do you see it? Isn't this somehow making the wolf the shepherd? If I ask my vendor what I should do, instead of first identifying what I need to do, where my pain points are.
I don't care, what enterprise app you've already invested in, right? And especially if you're a small or medium business. I mean, I guess you could go and find all kinds of alternate sources, and you should, at least in terms of basic literacy about AI, you should learn that. But you have an application that you're using to run some part of your business already. You've already decided you trust that vendor to help you run your business. If you don't know, I guess you should ask them. But I think, the good vendors, and like I said, a lot of these events, they're taking great pains to be very explicit in telling them, the customers, this is what we're doing. These are the tasks where we're using AI. This is how it works for that task.
Yeah.
And, you know, I find customers really appreciating that, because
Good.
I can't imagine personally having to tack on AI myself, right?
Yeah.
You know, if you're using an enterprise application for any of those major functions, and you wanted to say, oh, how can I go into the universe and find something I can add on, you're going to be pretty screwed. So I think the question for the vendors is, you know, go another mile to prove trustworthiness. Tell me how you're protecting the data. Tell me how you're building the models. Tell me where the data is coming from. Tell me if and how you use my data. All those kinds of questions, right? And I find that, you know, any of the reputable vendors that we all deal with most of the time have really taken pains to explain that.
I guess it boils down to, again, to what Marshall said before, asking questions and asking the right questions. So, because it shouldn't be too
and a
open,
lot
it
of
needs to be
them have
specific
all
enough.
this on their website. Like, I know Acumatica has an AI Bill of Rights or something now for their customers. So, you know, Workday has, oh my gosh, like an unbelievable amount of documentation around AI. So I really think Salesforce has another one, right? Now, you know, the other important question to ask and understand is, you know, are you charging for this AI, and how are you charging for it? Because that's a case where that's really all over the map, right? And some vendors are like, no, it's all pretty much included. And other vendors are, no, we're really charging you for most of it. So it's important to know that, especially if you're considering a new solution purchase. Although I would also say it's all in transition now. It's all early. It's all early. And we found in our survey that all but the smallest customers are willing to pay a little bit of a premium, like a 10 to 20% premium, if the AI is really helping them. So, you know, if I can really measure that I can do things better and faster and more effectively, you know, but, you know, you have to prove that.
Yeah, right. So there's nothing wrong with charging in addition if there is value in it.
If there's value, although some, you know, some vendors take the approach, we want to basically give you everything because we see it as the future development of our application. So that's
return on investment is knocking on the door.
Yeah.
On the other hand, customers also like predictability of the invoice, which is somehow at odds with the return on investment thing.
And co-piloting, as I joked around, is somehow a bit expensive these days. So if you want to get me addicted, you make it cheap in the start, and later you show me, because I have seen the benefits, that it is worth paying for it. That would have been my approach, but I'm not as greedy as some people.
Right, exactly. And you know, what are you going to use it for? Like Copilot, you know, obviously a lot of applications or a lot of companies are partnering with Microsoft with Copilot. But you know, it's early going. I think a lot of this will evolve, but I just think AI will become, you know, just this totally part of the fabric of applications.
And those co-pilots first need to prove their value. Unluckily, this hour went by too fast. Far too fast. So which leaves only one thing open, to ask you for famous last words.
Oh, famous last words.
Famous last words. No, we don't want to terminate you. So what I'm interested in is in your experience and also from the data that you have, how ready are businesses for the adoption of AI?
I think most businesses from our research are, for business purposes, they are pretty enthusiastic about AI. Now, that doesn't mean they don't have any caveats or any concerns, because they also have concerns, around security, data privacy, all those kinds of things. But, for most small businesses, any way you can help me do more with less, I want to know how to do that. And I think at this point, a lot of businesses feel like that is the promise of AI. Now, is it going to pan out that way? Or are there going to be some big bumps in the road that are going to send everybody running into the woods screaming? I don't know. But I think right now people are saying, for business purposes, I think I see how this is going to be something that's going to be a big help to my business. I don't really know exactly how yet, but very open-minded about it.
Okay, coolio. Time for Marshall then.
Yeah, just like that, the hour's up. This is always what happens when we talk to you, Laurie. We get into a conversation and it flows and flows, and there's still a ton of stuff that could be asked.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we can't do that in the space of an hour. So I will just have to thank you so much for giving us your time and letting us look at your studies. They're very interesting and important. I'm glad to have them around. To our audience, thanks for sticking around. We do appreciate it. I always like to see you. And you can tune in next week when we are diving into hyper-personalization and how and how companies have done it successfully. And that will be with our guest, Michael Obermeyer from SAS Institute. So, well, SAS Institute. These people know their business intelligence. So this should be yet another lively conversation. Until then, thank you once more for joining us.
Thank you, guys. Great to see you.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.